and welcome, Minister. I'd like to compliment you and Minister Kelly for the measures that aim to provide rent certainty both for landlords and tenants in the private rented sector. I think it's very positive and welcome for those thousands of families who, as we speak, are in risk of homelessness that could become a reality for them if the rents would rise further. And I have met a number of them recently throughout the constituency of Dublin Southwest. I consider these measures, though, to be fair, and I don't think they can be considered punitive for landlords, using that word punitive in a strong sense. I note that the landlords will miss the opportunity to review the rent 3 times during the relevant period of 4 years, but they will be allowed to adjust rents to the market level every 24 months during this 4-year period. So I think that measure will create more stability in the market, therefore less likely that the losses in market rents would be significant. I also think it's to be welcomed that there will be more emphasis on the landlord's responsibility to demonstrate a justifiable market rent. But I am concerned to the extent, I suppose, however, concerned to some extent about the practicality of the arrangements for landlords, and I'm particularly in relation to the need to present evidence in relation to 3 properties that are comparable, etc., in order to justify that rising of rent. As we know, and the reason I suppose I'm particularly concerned about the practicality of that is that, as we know, many landlords in the market are small operators. And as we also know, they are treated less favorably in taxation than are the corporate operators. I know that this bill does not discuss the taxation of private landlords, and I want to keep my comments really on the issue of what's in front of us in the bill today. But I do think, I know that will be raised in relation to finance bill, but there are some other, I suppose, in addition to landlords who may be willing to provide rents to those on the housing assistance programs. But I would have more to say about that in terms of your decisions in relation to increasing tax relief across the board. But I believe here in this case, in relation to this bill, that we need to consider the time and the work that the arrangements would cause the landlords, and that would need to be balanced against the goals regarding the stabilization of rents. Many landlords have stated their intention to leave the sector, and we do need to protect the current supply. So I think we need to listen to them, both in terms of the practicalities that I've been referring to, but also later as when we come to the issue of taxation. Today's landlords, I think, are simply trying to be reactive to their own cost base. And if there is more of a flight in relation to the, I suppose, the smaller landlords, we may be opening a space for those vulture funds that could buy into the sector and may have a negative impact in terms of what we're trying to legislate for here today. Minister, I also want to welcome the positive measures that the government is bringing forward that provides for extending the period of notice for any rent increase. I have a practical question in relation to that. In terms of the legislation, though, does that mean then, by extending it from the 28 days to 90 days, does that mean that effectively, if a landlord in that first period of rent freeze will be intending to raise the rent, does he or she need to give that notice 90 days prior to the ending of that first period of 2 years? I just can't find the answer to that. I'm just in the legislation and just wondering logically, is that the case? I am confident, though, that by that extension that the measures will have a positive impact and will help to slow down the rent increases, which will create stability on both sides. But I suppose my final comment, though, would be in relation to, and this is in consultation with Mr. Mike Allen from Focus Ireland in preparing for the debate, the bill does not help those who are already in difficulties due to the rent rises so far. Many families are homeless or in risk of being homeless because rent supplement levels simply have fallen behind the market. I know that the department has been consistent in stating that raising the rent supplement levels would only drive the rents up further. But now, as we have legislation in front of us that will effectively freeze the rent increases for the next 2 years, I'm wondering if the government, of whom, of course, you are a representative of, would consider then, would go back to that drawing board and consider raising the maximum rent supplement levels, which would indeed help many families who are struggling to secure a long-term home after this legislation becomes operational. So because we are freezing the rent effectively, then increasing rent supplement isn't going to drive the rents up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hayes.